bit of time because this one is starting to get into another conversation that I think is going to be important for us to be aware of as we start describing edge flow patterns. And some of the things that you're going to run into that might create trickiness in your modeling. All right? And I want to call it out as a little learning segment because, again, the goal is not to work flat all the time. We will eventually want to turn these into usable 3D forms. Working flat just allows us a strategy to get to a 3D shape. So let's say we actually had a shape, all right, that was like maybe some kind of tunnel shape, just like the one I'm going to build for you here. All right. Now, one of the things that, in anticipating what's going on, all right, with this shape, is that if I'm going to dimensionalize it, there's some areas that are going to potentially create problems for me in my modeling. And I'll go ahead and extrude for depth and thickness. I'm going to go ahead and reverse these normals so that we can work with it. Here we go. And then I'll isolate select this tunnel shape. The area that I think I want to point out that might be an issue when it comes to the way this model is going to work is this area here. This area where we have what we call 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 edges going into one vert. Gives a lot of power to that vert in a place where maybe we don't want it. The reason why we may not want it there is because if we want to add holding edges to this object, we're going to have some wonkiness in the way this smooths. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'll go ahead and add the holding edges to the shape. Now it's already redirecting. If you notice, the traffic is kind of shooting down. Now if I hit the 3 key, you see I still need some in the corner. So now I also have to make sure I got the holding edges to keep the corner about. When we do that, we're also going to create a situation where that's going to also affect our shapes elsewhere. When I hit the 3 key, I want you to notice something, and I'm going to turn off the wireframe so you can see this a little bit easier. So over here where the star junction was, we're getting this little weird pull away where if, let's say, I wanted this to keep this even, this area here is kind of being pulled taut. That's because of the star junction. It's right there on the top. The other thing that we're kind of running into is that notice that we have a kink in the curvature where we would like to keep that more rounded. All right? We don't just want to live with it in our modeling, and that's because our holding edges that are working here so nicely to keep the corner here are also interrupting the shape here. So this is, again, taking the time to kind of say, do we fix it? Well, of course we want to fix it. So the idea is that we want to move these star junctions away from these corners where possible and move them inward on the model a little bit, especially in places where it's more flat, where we're not going to get a big change of direction or curvature. We want to keep them on the interior of the model, but not in these corners. So the strategy is I'm just going to reroute a little topology with the combination of the multi-cut tool. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that. All right, and I'll go ahead and use the target weld tool. I'm going to grab this guy and this guy. And so I've effectively have moved the star junction away from the corner down inward so we can keep this pathway of faces more free and clear. Okay? So I'll do it to the other side so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and use my multi-cut tool. Let me go back to wireframe unshaded so we can see this. Go to multi-cut. Just connect here and here. And then we're going to go to target weld. There we go. And then we're going to get rid of all this extra geometry here and here. Okay. Delete edge. There we go. And we just effectively clean that area up. We have to do the same kind of cleanup on this side and this side of the model to get rid of the pinching there. So I'm going to go over here, target weld. So again, I want to keep the holding edges working on this corner, but then terminate their use over here. Same here. So now I'm going to go ahead here, delete, delete, select that edge too, and then select that edge, and then delete edge vertex, and now I'm left with a much cleaner solution. So the holding edge is working on this outside area, all right? And over here, we're getting this cleaned up. So you can see the difference now between this shape. Let me go ahead and turn off the wireframe so you can see this. Now this is a cleaner, rounder shape compared to this, which has the holding edges. So again, when you are working this simple and you know that you need to kind of keep these edges away, you're going to have to be willing to invest in a little cleanup. Or the other solution would be to plan this workflow in advance, or use another method to streamline your efforts. All right. So I'm going to go ahead here, delete key, delete edge, Q, and that's the proper way to delete edges, so that this way you don't leave any extra holding edges. There we go. And now we've got a shape that works, and we effectively got rid of the pinching that was happening up here and the kink that was in the curvature here, just by making some adjustments in the way we use our edges in key parts of our model. All right. So I'm going to go back to this and just show you that was the long way of getting to a solution. And there might have been a couple of ways to kind of do what I call either a preemptive strike or use a different tool set to get this fixed. Now, the good news is that in 2016, the use of the bevel tool getting a little bit easier for certain formations. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I use the bevel tool, if I get what I want, almost from the word go without all this unnecessary or extra cleanup. So we're going to give it a shot and see what happens. And now we're going to go ahead and just select the edges that we know that we're going to want to put holding edges, but only those edges. We don't want to over select stuff. We don't want to select interior edges if we don't need them. So now that I've got all my edges selected, now if I shift right click, now one of the cool things is that the bevel edge tool in 2016 is fixing some errors that used to be some things that you used to have to fix in the past. So if I go ahead and hit apply, there you go. In the past, we used to get this weird artifact here in the corner, but now it's fixing those corners where the star junctions, and it's creating that pathway that I was telling you about. And take a look, none of that extra cleanup or wonkiness, and all we have to do now is just dial in, make the thickness of the edges what we need it to, and then hit the 3 key, and that's so much easier to do now in 2016. All right, so that might be the most direct way to do the same thing, just by selecting edges and beveling. All right, so whether you wind up beveling or using holding edges, the concept is the same. 2 edges around the main edge, and we want these edge flow patterns so that we can get the shapes that we want. And we're always looking for efficiencies in our workflow to make sure that we can get the best possible shapes in the shortest amount of time.